You wake up this morning, and there's another head beside your neck, two minds, one stomach, one heartbeat. That shouldn't be possible. But nature has done it. Again. And again. Not in science fiction. In real life. Some snakes are born with two heads. Some turtles. Some calves. Even a handful of humans. But against all odds, some survived, which creates a problem science still finds fascinating. If there are two brains, who's actually living that life? Who decides where the body goes? Who feels hungry first? And if the two minds completely disagree, can one brain lose control of the body? The answers are far stranger than fiction, because once scientists started studying these rare lives, they didn't just discover how two-headed creatures survive, they uncovered something astonishing about every human brain on Earth. For centuries, people treated two-headed creatures like legends, stories told around campfires, circus attractions, even bad luck. But biology tells a very different story. This isn't folklore. Veterinary hospitals, museums, and medical researchers have documented two-headed animals for generations. Scientists call the condition polycephaly, meaning more than one head. In humans, one rare form is called dicephalus, where two heads develop on a shared body. So how does something like this happen? The answer begins only a few weeks after life starts. Every human and every animal begins as a single fertilized egg. That tiny cluster of cells divides again, and again, and again. Sometimes one embryo begins separating into identical twins. Normally, the split finishes, creating two separate bodies. But on extraordinarily rare occasions, the process stops halfway. Instead of two individuals, nature leaves one body with two heads. This is known as incomplete twinning, and it's the leading scientific explanation for most naturally occurring two-headed vertebrates. Scientists have documented this phenomenon in snakes, turtles, lizards, calves, cats, sharks, and humans. Here's what's remarkable. The second head isn't just an extra decoration, it's a real head with its own brain, its own eyes, its own tongue, and, in many cases, its own personality waiting to develop, which means the biggest mystery isn't how two heads appear, it's what happens after they wake up. Because once two brains begin sharing one body, nothing works the way you'd expect. To understand why, we have to follow the signals leaving each brain, because that's where scientists discovered something astonishing. Now comes the discovery that changed how scientists think about two-headed creatures. Most people assume if there are two heads, one brain must somehow be in charge. But that's usually not what happens. Each head has its own brain, its own consciousness, its own thoughts, its own decisions. Neurologists studying rare human cases, including Abigail and Brittany Hensel, found that each brain processes information independently. Each sister can think different thoughts, make different choices, and even control different parts of their shared body. That tells us something remarkable. Sharing a body doesn't mean sharing a mind. Think of it like putting two expert drivers behind one steering wheel. Both know exactly where they want to go. The problem is, there's only one vehicle. The same challenge appears throughout nature. Researchers studying two-headed snakes have observed one head trying to crawl left, while the other pulls right. The body literally receives competing instructions. Every movement becomes a negotiation. Every decision costs energy. And in the wild, hesitation can mean death. But movement is only the beginning, because another challenge appears almost immediately: hunger. Imagine two independent brains sharing one stomach. What happens when they both want something different? The answer is even stranger than scientists expected. This is where the mystery becomes even stranger. At first, you probably think, two heads must mean two stomachs. But in many documented cases, that's simply not true. Many two-headed reptiles share a single digestive system, one stomach, one set of intestines, one body, trying to satisfy two independent brains. Now think about what that really means. Imagine you're starving. You finally spot your favorite meal. At the exact same moment, someone else grabs your arm and pulls you towards something completely different. That's what can happen inside a two-headed animal. Researchers and wildlife caretakers have documented two-headed snakes striking at different prey at nearly the same time. Sometimes both heads compete for the same food. Sometimes one head is ready to eat, while the other is still scanning the environment for danger. Yet, no matter which head wins, everything ends up in the same stomach. The body has only one digestive system, but perhaps the strangest observation came from reptiles. There have been documented cases where one head attempted to bite, or even swallow, the other head, not because the animal was fighting itself, but because each brain processes visual information independently. To one brain, the other head may simply look like another moving animal. Think about how incredible that is. Two brains, looking at the same world, yet interpreting it differently. And if they can disagree about something as basic as food, what happens when they're making decisions that mean life or death? Because surviving in the wild isn't about being fascinating. It's about making the right decision before it's too late. Until now, we've talked about bodies. Now let's talk about minds. If two heads share one body, do they also share one personality? Medical researchers who have followed Abigail and Brittany Hensel for decades found the answer is no. Although they share one body below the neck, each sister developed her own personality, her own favorite foods, her own hobbies, even her own sense of humor. One can enjoy a conversation, while the other loses interest. One may want to watch a different movie or listen to different music. They're experiencing the same moment through two completely different minds. Psychologists say this happens because personality isn't stored in the body. It's built inside each brain through years of memories, experiences, and learning. In other words, sharing a body doesn't mean sharing an identity. It means learning to cooperate every single day. But having two different personalities creates another problem. Nature doesn't reward interesting lives. It rewards survival. In the wild, being different is rarely an advantage. For two-headed animals, it's often the greatest obstacle they face. Imagine a predator suddenly appears. One head wants to escape left. The other reacts to movement on the right. For a fraction of a second, the body hesitates. Researchers studying two-headed snakes have documented exactly this kind of conflict. Every disagreement costs time. Every hesitation burns energy. Even finding food becomes more difficult. One head spots prey. The other becomes distracted. Instead of acting as one coordinated hunter, the animal has to solve an argument before it can even eat. That's why most documented long-lived two-headed animals survive under human care, where food is provided, and predators don't exist. Nature is unforgiving. It doesn't matter how extraordinary you are, only whether you can survive until tomorrow. Which raises another fascinating question. If two heads create so many problems, could they ever provide an advantage? Surprisingly, scientists have asked exactly that. Could two brains ever outperform one? At first, the idea sounds reasonable. One head could watch for predators, while the other searches for food. Two sets of eyes, two brains processing information at once. In theory, that sounds like a survival advantage. But biology isn't that simple. For an advantage to matter, both brains have to agree. If one decides to move left, while the other insists on moving right, the extra brain becomes less of a superpower and more of a traffic jam. Evolution rewards cooperation, not confusion. That's why, despite appearing throughout nature for centuries, two-headed animals have never become their own species. Nature keeps producing them, but natural selection rarely allows the trait to spread. Sometimes, more isn't better. Sometimes, one coordinated mind is the greatest advantage of all. But while most two-headed animals struggle in the wild, a few humans have shown something incredible. Cooperation can achieve what instinct alone never could. So far, we've been talking about survival, but surviving isn't the same as living. To understand what life is actually like, let's return to one of the most extraordinary medical cases ever documented, Abigail and Brittany Hensel, born in 1990. Two heads, two brains, one body. Doctors weren't sure how long they would survive, yet decades later, they've done something few people thought was possible. They learned to live as a team. Medical reports and interviews reveal that each sister controls one side of their shared body more naturally than the other. Abigail primarily controls the right side, while Brittany primarily controls the left. But walking isn't as simple as each moving one leg. Every single step requires timing, balance, trust, and constant communication. Imagine learning to ride a bicycle, except your partner is connected to you every second of your life, every staircase, every doorway, every game, every car ride, every decision. It all requires cooperation. And perhaps that's the most incredible part. Scientists expected biology to be the biggest challenge. Instead, it was teamwork that made the difference. Their story reminds us that the human brain is astonishingly adaptable. Two independent minds can learn to move one body with remarkable precision, not because the body changed, but because the brains learned to work together.